Riverbank soil may be contaminated by activities on the site or from fill placed there to build up the bank or create more land. Some sites had large waste piles, landfills, or liquid waste lagoons that could release contaminants to the river. This happens when wind or river action erode the soil or bank, or when stormwater runs uncontrolled off the land to the river, carrying soil with it. When banks erode, these contaminants end up directly in the river. Remember, DEQ oversees work above the banks and EPA oversees work in the river. But the bank is where the land and the river meet.
It's not as clear-cut as it might look today on the modern industrial river, where there's a river channel and then the land, and you can see easily the line between the two. In natural history and in tribal culture, there's a big wide swath of land where the land and water come together. And that's where you find some of the most important tribal cultural resources. Plants like wapato, plants like tule and western red cedar.
The water and the riverway is really important. Our people were river people. And so there's a really close connection between the river and the landscape.
And that's what upland source control does, is it acknowledges that interaction between the land and the water. What happens in the upland area directly affects the water. And that's, for lack of a better word, that's really cool. That's really cool for me to be a part of that and making sure that interface between land and water is respected.
I think from our role, we see an important connection between what's happening to improve the quality of the river system, working with DEQ. Our families vitally depend on the river for food and subsistence, for those traditional things that we use, such as the cedar and the cattail and the tule. So those to us are really important. And that connection, I guess, plays into the quality of life for everybody, not just the tribe or the communities that live along the river and use the river.
When DEQ is working with a site to control contaminated soil in the riverbank, sometimes it makes sense for DEQ's work to extend into the river rather than having a separate EPA action in the same place. That's what happened at BP's Terminal 22 bulk fuel terminal. BP needed to replace their failing seawall to support their very large tanks, but also to help contain contaminated groundwater under the site. They entered into a voluntary cleanup agreement with DEQ, paid for the investigation and engineering, and also DEQ's oversight costs. BP constructed a temporary containment wall in the river and then installed a new steel wall behind the old concrete seawall. They also removed contaminated sediment and concrete debris from the old wall, which was now in the contained part of the river in front of the new seawall. This limited disturbance to the river and protected river organisms sooner than waiting for a separate action.
I'm Tom Gaynor. I'm an environmental engineer with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, and I work to clean up contaminated sites. This is a great example of both source control containment and removal of contaminated sediment from the river. The earlier that we can remove this sediment from the river and the organisms that are exposed to it, the better off those organisms are. This project had challenges and uncertainties that both parties had to work with, and we really worked together. I really appreciate BP coming to the table and making things happen, and DEQ had to be flexible. We really wanted this project to happen, and it was important that it happen early, and it did, and that's why it's a successful project.
The mission of the Department of Environmental Quality, also known as DEQ, is to be a leader in restoring, enhancing, and maintaining the quality of Oregon's air, water, and land. The Willamette River is the economic engine for the state of Oregon. Portland Harbor has been a thriving industrial area for over 100 years.
DEQ is working at over 170 sites up and down the Portland Harbor to make this river a better place for the environment and for the people of Oregon.